This is your campaign time.
Yeah.
It's service to the people, service to the nation. But the reality is also, in order to influence, in order to organize a big body of people, you also have to gain and garner popularity. You've got to win their votes.
Of course.
How do you hold that tension between kind of building a kind of persona and also being a charismatic leader while also staying true to the mission?
I don't think they are mutually exclusive. Politics and the cut and thrust of politics is about being able to bring people with you. If you can't bring people with you, then you are a useless politician. Politician needs to be able to win support, needs to be able to do difficult things. And I remember when I was health minister, one of the great privileges that I had was attending this course in Harvard that Idris arranged for me. And whoever goes to the Harvard Kennedy School knows this particular lesson on leadership. How does the Harvard Kennedy School define leadership? It's being able to disappoint people at the rate that they can accept. That's what politics is about, because you have to make difficult decisions. They're finite resources. You can't please everyone. Otherwise, you'll go bankrupt as a country. So coming back to that tension, you have to be able to lead, bring people with you, even though you know you have to disappoint them. But make sure you disappoint them at the rate they can accept. Otherwise, you lose. And if you lose, you're no good to anyone, because you have to make sure that people support you. And that's the bread and butter of a politician.
I want to jump in here because that is it hits right down to the core of what one has to do in politics. When Datuk Sri Najib was in government, and I was there at the time, he understood completely the fiscal issue. He needed to say, we need to raise some money to make sure we have money to do public transport. That's why we have today the MRT. We needed to make changes with our education system and our health system. We needed money to do it. But he said we must do it in a manner that we don't overborrow, because he was worried that we're overgeared. In fact, it was a session, he said, I can grow the economy at double digit. If I borrow a lot of money and we do a lot of public activities and spend money, we could do that. Increase the GDP at double digit. We shall not do that. Because that's growing the economy on steroids. That's not sustainable. So we have to then work on the private sector to do it. So he took the hard decisions to introduce GST. He also took the hard decision also to rationalize subsidy. Now, if I put that aside, now the current government, when they came in, they got rid of the GST and they also stole the subsidy rationalization. But now they are beginning to realize that they need money to go and do it. How would you rate the Madani government in the context of their promises for reform?
When Anwar became Prime Minister, a few months after he became Prime Minister, he invited me to the Treasury for a meeting with some of his advisors. And he asked for ideas. What would you like to see us do? So I said, apart from some programs which I felt were important and which I felt could attract investments that have now been implemented somewhat, I said there are 3 big structural economic reforms that you have to tackle. Any government in Malaysia will have to tackle these 3 things eventually. Whether you do it or not, that's your risk appetite. And that's, your political judgment, whether or not you feel you can disappoint people at that rate. One, I said, was tax reform.
Right.
You know that our tax base is too small. Too small compared to other countries. And we don't even have to talk about developed countries. Talk about countries which are our peers in terms of our GDP.
Sure.
Our tax base is just too small. The number of people that pay tax in Malaysia is disproportionately small to our peers. And that creates a problem for the government because your revenue base is too small. That's why we did the GST. So I said, you have to address this first. Tax reform, whether that's expanding your SST, whether it's GST, whether it's something. But I did say to him, I said, that to see the most efficient way to do this is GST or value-added tax.
Yes.
Consumption tax, basically, which he admitted it is. It is. So I said that's one, which they haven't done. They've expanded the SST. It's been postponed, delayed. But then again, it's not an efficient system.
Yeah, we know that.
We know this. We know the arguments. Secondly, I said subsidy rationalization. Continue with what
we started.
Najib, even Pak Lah actually started it. It was
correct.
he made that brave decision to raise petrol prices, and it came with considerable political cost.
I remember that.
Patla started it, Najib continued it, and I said, you have to do this because we are, subsidies are regressive and subsidies are also non-productive. And I said, the biggest elephant in the middle of the room is RON 95.
Yes.
No, the others are at the margins.
Yeah,
Diesel is at the margin. RON 95 is really
big deal.
the elephant in the middle of the room, right? So I said, that's number 2. And number 3, Idris, you will know this, is pension reform.
Sure.
Pension
Absolutely.
reform. Because that line item alone is what now maybe north of 20 billion a year, and it's going to rise. It's going to rise because the number of civil servants who are going to retire over the next 10 years.
Life expectancy.
Life expectancy has gone up. And that is going to reach north of 30 billion in the next 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So I said, you have to make a decision. Okay, civil servants who are in service and who have retired, we have an agreement, we have a contract with them. So they get pension, no problem. But every new hire, move them to EPF scheme.
Absolutely.
Move them to EPF scheme. So there's no contractual obligation already. This is a new deal. And unfortunately, it's tough luck for the new generation. Many different countries have moved away from this compulsory pension because you cannot sustain it. You cannot sustain it. So I said these 3 things. So how would I rate? Tax reform, not done. Subsidy rationalization, it looks like, Idris, it looks like
they're going to do it now.
Well, I don't know. Diesel's done. Diesel's done. RON 95 went from B40 to now T10 to maybe T5 to just foreigners. I don't know. So we wait and see. So partially done. And pension reform, he hasn't touched at all. So the rating has to reflect that. So if out of 3 big structural reforms, it's 1.5. So it's 50%.
I mean, most people say no money, no talk. The problem is that if you don't do those 3 things, you don't have enough money to make all the changes you want to do on the health system.
Right.
You don't have enough money for the education system and our public transport. Many things you can't do without money.
Sure.
That's why those things are fundamental. I totally agree with you. Let's say you become the prime minister. What are the things that you are going to do? Tell the rest of the world here is the opportunity for you to say, what is your true north? What are the key priorities that you want to focus on? This is your campaign time.
Yeah, well, some of it obviously we wanna keep. So that there's a element of surprise also. I think that's very important, that you don't oversell your agenda, and also because it can be appropriated before you get there. But I think of the ministries, let's start with the ministries first, that I think are important. And some of these answers are going to be cliched, but they're cliched for a reason, obviously. I think education has to be reimagined, because the K-12 model will be increasingly obsolete or incomplete over the next 15, all the way up to 2050. There's a necessity for people to be trained, their brains hardwired from when they are small, to get used to reinvention, because throughout their careers, their roles and responsibilities can become obsolete, have to pivot because of AI, because of automation, things like that. So it's not just about having better schools, better teachers, but also reimagining how we train and how we impart skills into people. So I think that would be a huge pillar of any future premiership, whether it's me or whether it's anyone else. Secondly, I always say that in this country, we have several ticking time bombs that if you don't take care of it, they will explode. And if they explode, then the cost of having to treat the damage will be more than if you could defuse the bomb right now. And the ticking time bomb that I'm concerned about, twin ticking time bombs. One is the aging population that we've spoken of earlier. But the problem is people are not just living longer. They're living extra years in ill health, in bad health. And that comes to the second ticking time bomb, which is our non-communicable disease burden. It's one of the highest
problem
in the region, whether it's diabetes, whether it's hypertension, cardiovascular disease. The cost of preventive medicine is much less curative medicine. By the time you go to potong kaki and all that, it's going to cost you a lot more, the public purse a lot more. So health reform, not just in terms of diffusing this ticking time bomb, but also making sure that health financing is sustainable. I think it's going to be crucial for any future prime minister. Otherwise, your fiscal bill just to treat people is going to be considerable. So health, education. And the third sometimes we take this for granted because we look at the skyscrapers in KL, but we have a chronic underinvestment in infrastructure in certain areas. I'm not saying everywhere, but in certain areas. If you look at our logistic and transport network, it can be so much better. And this is investment that has multiplier effect. These are investments. We were in cabinet together. Your DE investments, your development expenditure, spent properly, doesn't just have a multiplier for the construction phase, but it has a multiplier in terms of opening up regions, of making people, creating opportunities that don't exist. And I think that we have unfortunately spent too little on key infrastructure in certain areas and certain geographic areas. So those are the three things in terms of big bucket items for ministerial priorities. On style of government also I will change. I think that ministers and also the Prime Minister needs to be more engaged at the delivery level. So one thing that I always admired Idris for was how he focused on delivery. He was essentially the delivery unit for government in Pemandu. And I think if you structure the Prime Minister's office, you have to have certain units that operate to support the Prime Minister and also to support the cabinet and government. One is, of course, the policy unit, which is the core of keeping everyone on message and facing true north. Secondly, comms unit, because you have to communicate and bring everyone with you. Third, you have to have a delivery unit, and you have to work with the civil servants to have that delivery unit. I think one of the challenges that Pemandu had, I was watching from the outside, but also as a supporter, as a cabinet colleague, was having to work with the civil servants, getting them on board, because you can't transpose a foreign entity into government. They will drown you out, and rightly so. So you have to have a delivery unit. And the fourth unit that I would have in the PM's office or in the PM's department under the PM is a strategy unit. So that's your, you have people, the three units looking at the day-to-day tactics, but you have to have the guys who are there not to answer to Parliament, but to look ahead around the corner, what's going to happen. So I would reorganize how government is run in that sense.
So there's institutional reform, but then, you touched on the civil service, and there's also, I think, a need for then systemic change as well. And so that's now veering into the area of mindset, which is a lot harder to shift. So for you, what are some handles for leading and also changing mindsets?
I always believe that leadership by example is a strong catalyst for behavioral change. It's as simple as that. If the person that you are being led by, whether it's your parents, whether it's your captain in a team, if they're behaving a certain way, you tend to want to behave the way that they're behaving, even if it's not desirable. And wherever I've gone, I've tried to bring people together by how I lead the ministry or how I act. The first thing is, the first thing I tell everyone when day one at any ministry is, I understand there's a need for protocol, but let's not have protocol get in the way of the best ideas. Because if there's too much protocol in the room, the best ideas don't surface to the top. Everyone's mindful, I can't say this because who am I? My boss is sitting there, I'm behind. So let's get rid of that on day one. And that creates for a culture where ideas are free-flowing. No one gets censured for saying the wrong things. Once the decision is made, it's collective and everyone gets behind it. And I do believe, I wanted to share an experience that I had when I was first made minister. Idris was already in cabinet then. I remember the chief secretary to cabinet, to government then was Tan Sri Ali Hamzah, the late Ali Hamzah. Great guy.
I remember him.
Fantastic guy.
Cool guy.
Yeah, really nice guy. First week. So the first week that you are a minister, Idris doesn't have this experience because he was in JPM, he was in Prime Minister's department. But the first week you are a minister in a standalone ministry, first thing that you want to do is change your KSU. The mistaken belief that if I appoint a new KSU, then
Right.
that KSU is beholden to me.
Right.
Right? The old KSU is the ex-minister's guy. So I remember everyone made a beeline for Ali Hamza after the first cabinet meeting saying, can I change my KSU? So I did the same thing, lah. A new minister, the same thing. Ali Hamza pulls me aside and says, can I give you an advice as a young man? And I was fine. He was an older person, okay. Although I was a minister and he was a KSN. Said the test of a good leader is to be able to work with what you have.
Right.
In other words, he said, I'm not going to give you a new KSU. And I think, that really is, that was a good lesson for me. But 2 months later, he gave me a new KSU without me asking. But it was a good lesson for me because, especially something like the government, Leon, you can't change it. It's a behemoth. It's a leviathan, right? So it's the test of a really good minister and good prime minister, good leader, is getting the most out of that.
So you were given advice, and I think to that, what is your approach then to investing in the next generation of leaders?
Look, I believe in promoting people regardless of their age. When I was at KBS, and this is another KSU change, but it wasn't because I requested it. My KSU was promoted to a bigger ministry. So Datuk Jamil went to the domestic trade ministry. There was a vacancy. And I spoke to the then KSN and said, can I get a minister who approximates my age rather than somebody who is 2 years to go till retirement? And we promoted Lokman, who was then, I think, in his mid-40s. Now he's KSU still in MITI, if I'm not mistaken. And when I was in health as well, I wanted to bring somebody who was my age and elevate to TKSU, KSU. So I think, and I understand, we have to tread carefully because in civil service, seniority matters, time-based promotion is important. But at the same time, I looked at myself. When Najib appointed me as minister, I was still in my 30s. And to get that opportunity was not easy. And if he could take a chance on me, and I remember Pak Lah also had promoted young people. Mahathir, contrary to what many people think, when he was first made Prime Minister in 1981, he had young people around him. Musa then was young, Pak Lah then was young, Najib came in, Isa was in his 30s, made Menteri Besar of Negeri Sembilan. So I think this tradition of promoting young people is actually there in Malaysia.